schedule at 0-3 after a disappointing 29-10 loss on Christmas Day at home at Acrisure Stadium against the Kansas City Chiefs. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Shenderovich and Fishman Steeler postgame show here on Oneberg. Glad you could join us here on our Facebook channel. Maybe you're watching on YouTube or listening back on Spotify. The Steelers end the three-game gauntlet of their schedule at 0-3, as I said, and probably the worst of those three games was yesterday on Christmas Day at home against the Kansas City Chiefs, who then clinched the number one seed in the AFC now. With just one game to go, they are the number one seed, having beaten the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road convincingly yesterday, 29-10. Patrick Mahomes, 3 touchdown passes, over 300 yards passing. Travis Kelce, 8 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. The Chiefs got out to a 13-0 lead in this game and really never looked back. The other big keynote in this game as well was the difference of the offensive lines. The Steelers' offensive line yesterday struggled. Pass protection against Russell Wilson, which led to Russell Wilson scrambling multiple times, not making the best decisions as well under pressure, throwing a key interception in the red zone, in the end zone as they were trying to look to get on the scoreboard in the second quarter. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, 5 sacks yesterday, 1 interception, a forced fumble, and that was all without their top defensive player, Chris Jones, who was ruled out in this game due to an injury. Meanwhile, the Steelers defense, no big splash plays in this game, no sacks, no interceptions, no forced fumbles. They did get a little bit of pressure on Patrick Mahomes at times, but overall, they really could not get home to Mahomes. And with that, he took advantage and burnt them on several scrambles and several big throws downfield. A lot of miscommunication as well in that secondary and that linebacker core yesterday as well for the Steelers, which is disappointing to see this late in the season. Deshaun Elliott, the safety, in the postgame interviews said that quite a few times, that at this point in the season, they need to be communicating better, and the fact that they weren't in the right places at the right time certainly did not help their cause. Patrick Mahomes is now 4-0 lifetime versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. And get this, 17 touchdowns and only 1 interception in those 4 games. And then Travis Kelce, as we said, big game at the tight end position. He makes 8 receptions. The touchdown he caught was the 77th touchdown of his career from a reception standpoint. Out of all the tight ends that have played in Kansas City, he is now the top tight end as he breaks Tony Gonzalez, the longtime Chief who held the record prior to Travis Kelce. Kelce now the record holder in Kansas City for the most touchdown receptions at the tight end position. As I said earlier, the offensive line really struggling to protect Russell Wilson yesterday. And, just like against Baltimore, we saw Russ Wilson make some bad decisions. As good as he's played this year, the Steelers simply need him to play a little bit better. And yesterday was another example that in Baltimore a week ago, the scramble for the end zone, trying to score that touchdown, coughed up the football, and then, of course, had that interception against the Ravens as well in the second half last week. Well, same thing. Steelers are down 13-0 in the second quarter. They're driving, and Russ throws an interception in the end zone trying to look for Pat Freiermuth. That certainly did not help the Steelers' cause. The Steelers in these 3 games, can't really get a stop on defense. No big splash plays. Those have dried up. Those have disappeared. Now, they were banged up on defense the last couple of weeks. Yesterday, they were without Joey Porter Jr., but the defense still could not regroup at crucial times in this football game. And again, you can't spot Patrick Mahomes, a Hall of Fame quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, 13 points in a football game and expect to come back. The Steelers did make it a 13-7 game in the first half, but the second half, the Chiefs were just too much for the Steelers to handle in this football game. Again, you take a look at the Steelers in this 3-game stretch on the road at Philadelphia, at Baltimore last Saturday, and then against the Chiefs on Christmas Day. This was the worst out of those 3 games for the black and gold. Were they outcoached? Were they beat up? You can make a lot of different calls in this, but the Chiefs were also playing on just a 4-day rest as well, as they played last Saturday against the Houston Texans. And the Ravens went into Houston yesterday and they won big. Held the Texans to a safety. That was it. Only 2 points did the Texans get in that football game yesterday. So Baltimore, the Texans, the Chiefs, everybody was playing these games in such a short period of time, but obviously the Ravens and the Chiefs get the better out of these last 2 games, last Saturday winning, and of course winning yesterday as well. It is the Steeler postgame show here on Oneberg. Glad you could join us here the day after the Steelers falling to the Chiefs 29-10. We welcome your comments here on Oneberg. Please comment, please like, please share. We appreciate the support as always. And again, the Pittsburgh Steelers now 10-6 on the season. they will finish up against the Cincinnati Bengals at AccuSure Stadium. Not this upcoming Saturday and Sunday. They get a full 10 days off, but the following weekend, the first weekend in January, they will either be playing on that Saturday the 5th or Sunday the 6th, depending on how the NFL flexes that. They will make that decision this weekend after this week's games wrap up and see what games will be playoffs on the line for a lot of these teams. The Steelers have been in that position the last few years, having to go into the last game of the season to figure out their playoff fate. Well, this year they clinched a playoff berth when they were 10-3, as we said earlier this year, but these 3 games now have knocked them out of the AFC North race for the number 1 spot in the AFC North, which would have given them a home playoff game. The Ravens take care of business at Houston, and the Ravens finish up at home against the Browns on that first weekend in January. So if they win that game, they clinch the AFC North. And regardless of what the Steelers do against the Bengals, they will be on the road for that first playoff game. We'll get to the playoff scenarios in just a little bit. But let's take a look at the numbers in this football game from yesterday. We'll begin with the scoring recap between these two teams and how that all went down between the scoring summary between the Chiefs and the Steelers. I clicked on the wrong note. That's why I scrambled a little bit myself. Boy, Russell Wilson was scrambling yesterday multiple times. Now I'm scrambling here on my score sheet. The Chiefs took an early 6-0 lead as they missed the extra point. Harrison Butler missed that extra point, but it was Xavier Worthy, their rookie wide receiver, a 7-yard touchdown reception from Patrick Mahomes, and they led 6-0. Justin Watson, an 11-yard touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes in the first quarter as well, gave them a 13-0 lead for the Chiefs with 4 minutes left. Justin Watson, a native of South Fayette here in the WPIAL and Western Pennsylvania, with that big touchdown reception. The Steelers did get on the board in the second quarter. Russell Wilson snuck it in from a yard out, making it a 13-7 game with 10:28 left in the second quarter. But as we went to the third quarter, the Chiefs open up with a field goal, a 32-yard from Buckler. It's 16-7 at that point. Chris Boswell adds an field goal from 36 yards with 5:45 left in the third quarter to make it 16-10. And then the fourth quarter, the Chiefs pull away with 2 big touchdowns. Kareem Hunt, a 2-yard touchdown run to make it 22-10. The Chiefs go for 2. They don't get it. The conversion pass from Patrick Mahomes was no good. And then Travis Kelce, as I said, he gets his 77th career touchdown reception out of the tight end position for the Chiefs. 12-yard reception from Patrick Mahomes makes the score 29-10 in the fourth quarter with 12:38 left. And the Steelers could not get any closer than that. Only 1 touchdown yesterday in this football game for the Black and Gold as they fall 29-10. Again, we welcome your comments here on Oneberg. Please comment. We will post them here. Your thoughts on the Steeler game yesterday on Christmas Day. Did it ruin your Christmas? For a lot of Steeler fans, it might have. Again, this was a game in which I think we're not surprised that the Chiefs won. I think a lot of us are probably surprised the way they won, 29-10. The Chiefs have played a lot of close games this year. This was a blowout for them yesterday at AccuSure Stadium. I thought this would be a lot closer of a football game, and it certainly wasn't, especially from the beginning. Patrick Mahomes, a big day, 29 of 38 for 320 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks as well. Kareem Hunt added 9 carries for 20 yards in this game and a touchdown. Other than that, the Steelers actually held the Chiefs from a rushing standpoint to only 69 total yards on the ground. Patrick Mahomes only had 1 scramble for 12 yards. That was it. But again, he didn't have to do much with his legs because he had plenty of time to sit in the pocket and throw the football downfield to all of these players. Travis Kelce leading the receptions for Kansas City yesterday, 8 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. Xavier Worthy, as I mentioned earlier, he had a big day, 8 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown. Justin Watson, 2 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown as well. Hollywood Brown, remember him from the Ravens, now with the Chiefs, 4 catches for 46 yards as well. The Chiefs, again, a lot of pressure yesterday on Russell Wilson, 5 sacks. We talked about the interception. They also forced a fumble. Their defense made the splash plays that simply the Steelers did not. And that was a big difference in the Steelers' first 13 games of the season that got them to 10-3. Their defense made splash plays. They got big sacks, big turnovers, key situations. That simply did not happen yesterday against the Chiefs. For the Steelers, their stats look like this. Russell Wilson, 23 of 37 for 205 yards. He did have that interception. Russell Wilson sacked 5 times yesterday as well. Najee Harris, 13 carries for 74 yards. Jalen Warren, 11 carries for 71 yards. Russell Wilson, 6 keepers for 55 yards when he wasn't sacked in the backfield. So the Steelers as a team yesterday, they actually rushed for 202 total yards. Now, again, the Najee Harris numbers, 13 carries for 74 yards. A lot of that came later in the second half when the game was pretty much out of reach. Passing-wise, Pat Freiermuth leading the cause, 7 catches for 60 yards. George Pickens. We've yet to talk about George Pickens. He was finally back yesterday, 3 catches for 50 yards. I think the Steelers were hoping that Pickens would open up the passing game a little bit more. Wasn't his fault by any means. He was balling out yesterday. You saw him get emotional several times about the Steelers' struggles on offense. But Pickens, 3 catches for 50 yards, an okay day, but not the big impact that you would hope to get from Pickens in that football game. But I think give credit to the Chiefs in that secondary. They played very well yesterday against Pickens and the other Steeler receivers. Jalen Warren, 5 catches for 41 yards out of the backfield. Calvin Austin III, a day of 4 catches for 31 yards as well. And again, Pat Freiermuth, he loses that 1 fumble. Russell Wilson also fumbled the football, but got it back. That was early in the game. And the Steelers, again, on defense, not too much to talk about here. No sacks, no interceptions, no forced fumbles. Their leading tackler for the day was Minkah Fitzpatrick with 7. And when you have your safety being your leading tackler for the day, that's not necessarily not a good thing either. That means he was trying to cover a lot of ground out of that safety position. Again, the Steelers fall 29-10 to the Chiefs yesterday. They are now 10-6 on the season. And let's take a look at the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens go into Houston yesterday. They win that game, and they're now 11-5 and in complete control in the AFC North. They will finish up against the Browns at home at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore the first weekend of January. The Steelers now 10-6 on the year. Again, they will finish up that first weekend in January at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Both those games, again, the schedule for the final week, week 18 of the NFL schedule has not been officially formed yet. There will be some games on Saturday, some games on Sunday at different times, depending on how all the playoff scenarios play out after this weekend. The Cincinnati Bengals are 7-8 on the year. They will face the Broncos this Saturday at 4:30. And then they will finish up at Acrisure Stadium against the Steelers in that final week. The Browns, 3-12. They got the Dolphins at home before finishing up at Baltimore. Looking at the AFC playoff picture, Kansas City has clinched the number 1 seed. Buffalo pretty much has the number 2 seed wrapped up. The Ravens now the 3rd seed. And again, a win at home against the Browns. Does not matter what the Steelers do. If they beat the Browns at home, they will be the AFC North champs, and they will host a first-round wild card game. Houston, the number 4 seed, they are locked in there as well as having won the AFC South already. The Steelers are the 5th seed right now if the playoffs were to start today. The Chargers are the 6th seed, and the Broncos are the 7th seed. So if the playoffs were to start today, the Steelers would actually travel to Houston. That might be one piece of good news right now for Steeler Nation. If you're trying to grab onto something and feel good about something out there, it's the fact that out of all the places to go, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Houston as the 5th seed would play the 4th seed. So the Steelers would actually go to Houston, and that would be their probably most favorable matchup to try to win their first playoff game since 2016. It would be at Houston because let's face it, if they have to go to Baltimore or Buffalo, man, those are extremely tough places to play. It is the Steeler Postgame Show here on Oneberg, sponsored by Shenderovich, and Fishman. I am your host, Ed Troop. We still have a few more minutes here with you to wrap up and put a bow on the Steelers game on Christmas Day. What did you think about the game? Please comment here on Oneberg. Andy Reid and the Chiefs were fired up afterwards. Andy Reid dressed up as Santa Claus and told the Chiefs players in the locker room at Acrisure Stadium that their gift was a first-round bye, having won that game yesterday against the Steelers. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce were named the Netflix players of the games. They had the Santa robe on. They ate that weird football, which looked like a red velvet chocolate cake that was made out of. That was kind of weird. These networks all trying to piggyback off the John Madden Thanksgiving Day turkey celebrations that he did forever. Now it seems like any of these games on a holiday, Black Friday, Christmas Day, whatever, they always try to come up with these gimmicks for player rewards. I thought that one was a little bit of an odd one yesterday, and it looked like Mahomes and Kelce were a little bit odd with it as well when they opened up the football, and it was some type of chocolate red velvet cake. Kelce did take a bite of it, though, then I'm sure that was the end of that. But either way, the Chiefs celebrate, and they should. They're now 15-1 on the season and atop the AFC with the big victory yesterday. So where do the Steelers go from here? That's the big question in Steeler Nation. Mike Tomlin said after the game in his post-game comments that they're going to review everything. And are there any changes to be made? They will look at that. They will make changes going into the final week. But I think that's the key there, folks. It's the final week of the season. What changes could you possibly make? Maybe you give Jaylen Warren some more carries than Najee Harris. But outside of that, you pretty much have what you have here in 2024 to work with. Maybe scheme and strategy is changed a little bit next week. The Steelers blitzed a lot yesterday, having most of their defense back healthy, other than Joey Porter Jr. And Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, they executed that well. When they blitzed Deshaun Elliott or somebody out of the secondary, Kelce was left open and he got 8 catches for 84 yards because of that. So maybe there's some adjustments there with the Steelers not being as aggressive on defense going into that final game. They're going to have to do something because Joe Burrow, just like Patrick Mahomes, will throw on this team. He did that earlier this season in Cincinnati, and he certainly will do that again this upcoming week. And by all means, the Steelers have to win this game for a couple different reasons. One is if the Browns would upset the Ravens, which I doubt will happen, but if they do and the Steelers would beat Cincinnati, then they would win the AFC North. So that's still playing out there as well for the black and gold going into that final week. But I think just getting a win to build some momentum, end a 3-game losing streak that's been ugly these 3 games, to get a win and get some momentum going into the playoffs, I think would go a long way for this football team. You want to play better. You want to start getting this offense going. You remember there was a time in this season not long ago in which they scored, in the upper 20, 28, 29 points into the 30s, mid-30s. They've not done that these last few weeks. They've been shut down, by the Eagles, by the Ravens, and now by the Chiefs. Now, again, George Pickens was out for some of those games, but he was back yesterday, and they still struggled, especially in that passing game. Again, Russell Wilson, the numbers, 205 yards passing. A lot of that was in garbage time there in the second half when they were playing catch-up. Looking at the team stats from yesterday, then we will wrap things up and put a bow on it with the whole Christmas theme. First downs, the Steelers actually had more first downs than the Chiefs, 23-20. Third down conversions, the Steelers were 50%, 8 of 16, not bad there. The Chiefs only 3 of 10 for 30%. Fourth downs, the Chiefs 1 for 1, Steelers 0 for 1. Total yards in this game, the Steelers 364. The Chiefs 389, so just about even there. And as I mentioned, team rushing-wise, the Steelers 202 total yards rushing yesterday against the Chiefs and only 69 for Kansas City. So the Steelers rush defense with Obajobi back up front. Cam Hayward got shaken up a little bit late in that game, but he seemed to be okay. The defensive line, as far as from a rushing standpoint, did a pretty good job, only limiting the Chiefs to 69 yards rushing. But the passing game is what killed him yesterday. And again, Patrick Mahomes, 329 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. So the Steelers secondary did not do good there. Penalty-wise, the Steelers were okay there yesterday too. Only 4 penalties for 25 yards. Meanwhile, Kansas City was penalized 9 times for 90 yards. And time of possession also in favor of the Steelers yesterday in their Christmas Day game. 31 minutes and 22 seconds to 28 minutes and 38 seconds for the Kansas City Chiefs. So, normally when we look at these team stats, you win time of possession, you get less penalties, you win total yards. Those are all key categories, third down conversions. The Steelers did a lot of that yesterday, other than total yards in this football game, and that was relatively close. Again, 389 to 364. You usually feel pretty good about it. At least it's going to be a close game. Even if you lose, it's a close game. Well, despite winning all those categories yesterday, the final score, they did not win. Again, losing 29-10. That's going to do it for our Oneberg Steeler postgame show, sponsored by Shenderovich and Fishman. We're glad you could join us here on Oneberg. Brian will be back with me next weekend, that first weekend in January, against the Cincinnati Bengals. We will have the Steeler postgame show here on Oneberg right after that game against Cincinnati. The last 2 games, a little bit quirky with the schedule, late Saturday night, and of course yesterday on Christmas Day. So we've done the day after for our postgame show, but we'll get back on track against the Cincinnati Bengals. And then in January as well, we will have the Steeler Steeler preview for the playoffs. Playoff preview. I was ready to say postgame. We'll have that too, but the word I'm looking for is playoff preview show. Brian and I will be previewing the Steelers' first round wild card playoff game, which most likely now appears that it will be on the road as the Steelers fall out of the AFC North first place position. The Ravens are there now. The Steelers are now the number 2 team in the AFC North. The good news is they've clinched a playoff spot. The other good news is they could potentially be the 5th seed in the AFC, and if that happens, they would go to Houston, who will be the 4th seed in the AFC for that first round wild card playoff game. If they fall any further out of 5, if they're 6 or 7, that's most likely a trip to Baltimore or a trip to Buffalo. And I think Steeler Nation would feel very uneasy about that, especially at this point. But really, any game's uneasy at this point. The Steelers need to get back on track, and they will have 10 days to do that, as they do get a mini bye here going into the final week of the season, having played 3 games in 11 days, but unfortunately going 0-3 during that stretch. Hey, have a great day, everyone. We appreciate you joining us here on the Shenderovich and Fishman Steeler postgame show here on Wunderberg. Again, the Steelers falling yesterday on Christmas Day 29-10 to the Kansas City Chiefs. They are now 10-6 on the year, are the Steelers, and they will look to regroup in that first weekend in January against the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll see you then on the Steeler postgame show. Have a great day, everyone.